The Dead Space remake made me extremely moist and whole again. Never playing the original Dead Space, this remake absolutely blew me away and also made me change my pants on numerous occasions. The fact that the core of this game still holds up so well today shows how dog water the bar has gotten for the video game industry today, and is also a testament to how much of a Giga Chad the original was. Always been a little sus about playing horror games, but I knew I had to give this one a shot. Technically, I had played a little bit of Dead Space 2, so I wasn't completely clueless stepping foot into this one, and after playing through the remake, I can easily say that this is one of the best purchases I've ever made.
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
Every single detail about this game, the gameplay, the dismemberment, the storytelling, the depth, the lore, you name it, it is absolutely incredible. I'm not very huge into single player games, but even with that in mind, I still have not had many games capture me as this one did.
Pizza time.
It's funny to say this about a remake, but Motive and EA did a fantastic job of just simply remaking the original game. This was technically Motive's first AAA game, so not a bad start, but also kind of hard to mess this one up. They barely changed the original at all. The few additions that they did make only added more depth to the overall experience. I was honestly pretty shocked to see that there were no devs from the original that worked on this remake, but more on that point later. Now let me get into more detail on why this Dead Space remake made me I want to kiss and punch the original developers in the face, because the jump scares and horror elements of the game were so perfectly placed that it made the game ridiculously fun while also making me soil my undies violently, passionately. Probably say this a ton of times, but the detail from the original Dead Space clearly carries over into this one. It really does feel like a horror movie because of how well the timing and placement is executed with all the monsters throughout the game. The base combat mechanics are simple and yet very satisfying. The fact that they force you to dismember each enemy makes encounters intense, and they never get old. Eventually you do start to get used to the constant stress and jump scares the game throws at you, which is funny because eventually I found myself shit talking and curb stomping each necromorph by the end of the game. But starting out the beginning, this game just clearly shows you how well it knows game design. It hands each new mechanic to you in slow and steady bursts, which allows you to get a feel for each new thing before it throws you into the deep end. It surprised me how important it was to not waste any of the loot you found. It was also very nice to see that exploring actually rewarded you with more valuable loot. The harder the difficulty you choose, the harder it is to make sure you always have enough loot, specifically ammo. The fact that ammo starts to get scarce forces you to get creative with how you kill your enemies. They also added a permadeath mode, which was not in the original. This was a nice touch. There's no way in hell I'm ever putting myself through that torture, and if I do, I fear for my well-being and my prostate. The mechanics all flow and work so well together that you feel yourself get more comfortable with them after each mission, and just when you start to get too comfortable, they start throwing shit like this in, and this, and this, and this. You get the idea. I was also surprised at how much I actually used the store. I ended up selling the ammo of the weapons that I didn't like and then buying ammo for the weapons that I did like. This probably wasn't the most efficient way to use my cash, but I made it work. It was also nice that I could just buy the suit upgrades with cash, and it was cool to see how many different suits there were in the game. Getting jumped by the necromorphs, killing the necromorphs, and then curb stomping their bodies just never got old. Especially when you got Big Daddy Isaac dropping lines like this on you. You piece of shit! Son of a bitch! The boss fights never got repetitive either. They were always different and required different strategies to take them out. Same thing with the mobs. They kept adding new ones all throughout the game, so there was always something new you gotta worry about. From early on in this game, it was clear to me that the original Dead Space was just designed ridiculously well. The original devs knew exactly what it took to make a top tier game, and I'm glad the devs that did this remake kept all of that intact, but my diapers and toilet were definitely not intact. Now on to the story. I won't touch on the story too much so I don't spoil it for anyone, but all I will say is that I was really shocked with how invested I was with the story throughout the whole game. Honestly, I think the gameplay was just so damn good it made me even more invested in the story than I thought I would have been initially. But there was a surprising amount of depth and lore that went into the story, and it definitely kept me wondering what the hell was going on. The fact that they added side missions into the remake was such a great move. Again, I'm not a huge single player guy, but I literally went and did every side mission in the game because it added just a little bit more detail to the story, and I thought it was cool that they did that. I really recommend doing all the side missions because there are a lot of little hidden things that you can find, and they're just really cool, especially after you finish the game and it all makes sense. Also, quick little tip, pay attention to the first letter of each word on every chapter as you play through the game. Do not look it up before you finish the game. Thank me later. I wanted to touch on the fact that I was really surprised to see the studio behind the original Dead Space did not make this remake. Actually, there was pretty much nobody from the original trilogy at all that worked on this game. The studio that EA assigned to do the remake is Motive Studio. For all intents and purposes, this is basically their first AAA game. They did some sort of work on on Battlefront 2, but I'm not sure how much. And they did Star Wars Squadrons, which to be honest was not really a scale of a AAA game, and that's literally it. So this Dead Space Remake was their first big solo project. Apparently they only consulted one person from the original when making this remake, which in my eyes makes it clear that their goal all along was to literally just give Dead Space modern day graphics and audio, and that's it. On top of a few quality of life additions that they made, the remake is almost identical to the first, and that is exactly what needed to be done. It feels really common sense to say it that way, but with how trash the gaming industry has delivered over the past decade now, I guess it's not common sense. I feel that EA saw what Resident Evil was doing with their remakes and said, why don't we do that? The games are really similar, and it's funny because they both work. It's really not a bad idea, taking older games that had either technological limitations or graphical limitations, or in this case, just simply giving it a modern day upgrade. It's a great move. It also sparks the idea, what other games would be amazing if they were remade? I know that Knights of the Old Republic was supposed to get a remake, but that shit got canned. Put down in the comments below what other games you would really want to see be remade today. I know that EA is considering remaking the second Dead Space based off the success of this one, and I hope that they do. Honestly, I wouldn't mind if EA Motive did some sort of soft reboot with the whole franchise and made a whole new trilogy, or also wouldn't mind if they just remade all three. Basically what Resident Evil is doing right now, but only if Motive can still keep the standard high and just retouch the graphics and audio and making quality of life changes when needed. With that being said, I'm now very much looking forward to playing the original Dead Space 2 next, and I hope that they remake that one as well. Honestly, if they don't remake the second one, I'll be very sad and unhappy, and I might just have to throw bricks at a very high velocity right at EA's fuck. It would be really cool if they did a brand new trilogy of Dead Space, and considering they now have this game to go off of, it wouldn't be as hard as it was originally, but I would hesitate if nobody from the original trilogy had any sort of creative voice if they did decide to go ahead and make a fourth Dead Space or a new trilogy, because they were the true masters of the baiting, if you know what I'm saying. Either way, this remake was phenomenal. It should serve as an example for any other studio that is considering remaking a game of their own. This was very simply a graphics and sound overhaul with minimal quality of life tweaks here and there, and that is all that this game needed to be. The studios that use the terms remake or remaster just to do some bullshit upgrades and slap another $60 or $70 price tag on the title are absolute scumbag. But when studios actually put in the effort and rebuild the technology of the game from the ground up to give it a modern day upgrade while still using the exact same mechanics that made the original great, that is the correct way to do it. Again, I'm very surprised that EA of all companies actually made the right decision here, because EA has certainly had a rough stretch in recent years, and by rough I mean absolute dog shit. Leave a comment down below if you enjoyed the original Dead Space or this remake, or if you think Dead Space 2 should get a remake, or even if you have any other ideas for games that you think would do well with a similar remake. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this one, and or if you made it all the way through without your pants being soiled. And well, shit, I guess I gotta go play the second one now. Time to grab a bunch of fresh pair of undie onedies, cause
Oh no! They're coming in through the back door! Grab the children! Save the children!